So we've got a lot to get to. As I talked about, 247sports.com right now, you can go to it. I would imagine it's still on the front page, and we can show you our staff, our national staff's national predictions for this year. And so you can go there and read it, and I'm not going to necessarily go down everyone's prediction in every single conference, but I did kind of want to run down a few things. There were clean sweeps in 2 of the Power 5 conferences, at least that are going to play, and I'll get to those in a second. But the ones that I wanted to get out of the way real quick, like I don't talk about a lot of Heisman. I just don't really care about it. Never really cared about it. I understand why a lot of people have fun with it. It's just never been at the forefront. I've never done a Heisman episode on Late Kick, and I probably won't this year. But either Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne was a prediction for everyone. I picked Lawrence. It took me about 2 seconds. I picked Lawrence to win the Heisman. But outside of that, now let's start in the ACC. I'm going to talk about the ACC a fair amount on this show tonight. All Clemson. Everyone predicted Clemson. I don't think that's any surprise. And on top of that, not only did everyone predict Clemson, but also I think everyone was Clemson versus Notre Dame in the ACC championship game. Let's just pause. If I were to take you back to New Year's Day and I were to say, hey, I know the playoffs are coming up, national championship game's coming up, but here's a bold prediction for you for the 2021 season. It's going to be Clemson versus Notre Dame in the ACC championship game. And then just stop. And what would people have said? What would you have said? You would have had me tested, not for COVID, but for something else. But yes, Clemson versus Notre Dame. That's the prediction for yours truly, as well as everyone else in the ACC. And I think everyone picked Clemson to win the ACC. Yes, they did. So the Big 12, that's the one I'm really excited about because that's the conference that's by 10 miles, I think, the most wide open. I picked Texas to win the Big 12, and I picked them over Oklahoma State. I am not sold. As much as I've been pumping the future of Oklahoma, and you guys have been calling me a Sooner homer, naturally, growing up in Columbus, Georgia, I gravitated towards the Oklahoma Sooners. I digress, though. As much as I've been pumping the future of Oklahoma, man, I'm not sold at all on the state of the program right this second. So the state of the team, I guess I should say, right this second. So I picked Texas over Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. We had 3 different conference winners predicted in this thing. It was a combination of Texas and Oklahoma State. But the Big 12 could just be wild. I mean, it could be crazy. I'm really looking forward to the Big 12. I imagine we will probably talk Big 12 more this year than I ever have, period, doing any kind of college football coverage. SEC was all Alabama. Everyone picked Alabama to win the conference. Now, as for who Alabama would face in Atlanta in the SEC championship game, this is going to be a point of contention. I can already tell. 5 went for UGA, including me. Much more on that in just a second. And 2 went for Florida. So out of the 7 here, 5 are still rolling with Georgia. Now, I'm privy to some behind-the-scenes inner workings of this because I participated. We did turn these in before Jamie Newman opted out. However, we had the opportunity to change our picks. I don't know how many people changed their picks, but we're still overwhelmingly on Georgia here. What does that mean? Probably not much, but I'm going to talk about that more later in the show, so stick with me there. If you got a problem with that and you're on the Florida side of the fence or you're a Florida fan, stick with me on that. I'm going to talk about Florida a lot. In the AAC, also a conference I'm going to talk about more tonight. This one was all over the place. We had 3 different conference winners predicted among the 7 who were picking. 2 went for Memphis, 3 went for Central Florida, and 2 went for Cincinnati. I'm on Cincinnati. I'm really high on Cincinnati, and I picked them to win over SMU. Like, I think SMU could do some things this year. I think they have the best quarterback in the conference. I think they, to be honest with you, may have one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the state of Texas, in Shane Buechele. You could argue with me on that point, but I don't think you could argue they are a vastly upgraded team. I remember talking a little while ago to some folks at SMU, and you know we talked to Sonny Dykes, actually. We had him on the Social Distance series, and he was more aggravated than anyone that college football season could potentially be canceled because he knew he had a good team. And they had kind of constructed everything, and like they had it in place, and then boom, COVID. So, hey, at least they've got their season underway right now. But SMU, I think, could be a dark horse or a dark pony, if you will. Conference USA, it was pretty much all UAB. 1 went for Western Kentucky. I picked UAB. Sunbelt was a combination of App State and UL Lafayette. I picked Louisiana and Billy Napier to win that. But here is what I found most interesting. So the playoff, everyone has Clemson in, everyone has Alabama in. Bud Elliott has Clemson, Notre Dame, 1 and 3. Now that's interesting. It's the same as it would be interesting if someone had a combination of like Alabama and Florida or Alabama and Georgia. You got to figure out, especially if it's Alabama, Georgia, because they play each other in the regular season, just like Clemson and Notre Dame play each other in the regular season. If both of them make the playoff, how's it happening? Are they splitting? Is one winning the regular season? Is one winning in the conference championship game? Or could it be that Notre Dame loses competitively to Clemson 2 times, and that's their only 2 losses? Is that how it happens? Is there a random third team that pops up and pulls an upset somewhere? So Bud had Clemson, Notre Dame 1-3. Barton riding with Oklahoma State. He's invested heavily. Out with what T. Boone Pickens was to Oklahoma State, Barton Simmons is now to Oklahoma State. So he's got them number 4. Chris Hummer, myself, and Trey all have the Texas Longhorns in the college football playoff. Marcelo put Cincinnati in, which answers, at least in his mind, a question that I'm about to ask coming up later in the show. First team out was tough for me. The first team out, I'll just read them in order. I won't even attribute them, but Texas for one person. Georgia, 3 people said Georgia will be the number 5 team. A couple of people said Notre Dame. I said Florida, because as much as I believe in Georgia still, I believe in Florida too, man. I'm about to talk about it a little bit later on. So I've got Florida as the first team out, basically meaning it's anyone's ball game over there. National champ, Bud Elliott picks Alabama. Brad Crawford picks Clemson. Brandon Marcello picks Alabama. Barton Simmons picks Alabama. Chris Hummer picks Alabama. Trey Scott picks Clemson. And I pick University of Alabama. Because of the Forrest Gump tie-in, of course. So those are the 24/7 Sports national predictions. Now those are not the late kick official predictions of the season. I've been known to flip-flop notoriously on a moment's notice, so these aren't even my final predictions. I could change these things tomorrow, but I've talked about predictions coming on Late Kick, and we will have far more in-depth predictions coming up very, very soon on this here program, so stay tuned for that.